This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in EdTech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hi there, my name's Ladek, and my guest for today is Ann Herrmann-Nehdi, who is the Chief Thought Leader and Chair of Herrmann International. She's an author, researcher, and keynoter whose work is specialized on the practical application of neuroscience and cognitive diversity to human and organizational development and improvement. Ann has several widely viewed TEDx talks and is the co-author of the Whole Brain Business Book, the second edition. Her current research includes workplace resilience and the brain, the future of work, and the development of women leaders in the workplace. In this very flowing conversation, Ann and I talk about the core concept of learning in the flow of work and its significance in today's quick-changing work environments. Ann then illustrates the natural human instinct to seek instant solutions and learning opportunities in everyday life challenges. We then shift the conversation to discuss the applicability of learning in the flow of work across different teams and its customization to fit diverse learning needs. And then finally, we wrap up our conversation contemplating the balance between immediate on-the-job learning and the necessity of taking time out for deeper, more immersive learning experiences, especially when considering significant pivots in one's career path. And remember, we record this podcast live so that we can interact with you, our listeners, in real time. So don't be surprised when you hear Ann and I answer questions and react to comments as they come in. If you'd like to join the fun every week on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, just come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe. Now, I give Ann Herrmann-Nehdi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eLearn podcast. My name's Ladek, as you've heard, but as I like to tell everyone, here at the start of 2024. Wow, we're starting 2024. That's fantastic. The show is not about me. It is about my guest here today, Ann Herrmann-Nehdi. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you.
You're doing great, but as we talked about in the green room before we started this, there's a bit of a conundrum around you or a potential conundrum around you. So tell us, where do we find you sitting?
I'm in Western North Carolina where storms are coming on through. So if there's a little bit of rumble in the background, that might be what's going on. And hopefully this will not interrupt our conversation today.
I want to go one level deeper there. So is it just rain, or in Northern Carolina, do you get ice and that kind of stuff as well?
We sometimes do, but not today. So okay. The good news is we're going to get rain only. The bad news is we'll get a lot of wind too. So we'll see what that ends up being, right?
Well, happily, you look like you were in a nice, cozy room/office space. Fantastic. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us about the work that you do, the organization that you represent or come from that you've been working with for forever, and sort of what your focus is.
Great. So I am chair and chief thought leader. I always think it's fun to have a title like that people wonder, like, what is that anyway? Mm-hmm. I guess I do a lot of thinking of Herrmann. And we are a global organization that has been studying the brain and how we think for close to 40 years. And we help individuals, teams, and organizations bring their whole brain to work. In other words, how do I take all of the thinking I have available to me as an individual and as a team and apply that in a way that gets me the best possible results? And we often get in our own way. So we've got assessments and tools and lots of learning solutions that we provide people in their day-to-day workflow. And it's part of that focus that brought me to learning in the flow of work, because at the end of the day, we're thinking every day. It's not like we go off for a program and then learn to think and then come back and try to apply it. This is ongoing. These have to be tools that we use in our day-to-day work. So that's really what brought me to this topic a few years ago when we were looking at how do we do that?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. So The question that we had here for this show, and everybody saw it in the splash screen in the beginning, there's like, what can you define? What exactly is learning the flow of work? And take the sub question too. Why do I care? Why do I
That
care?
is a very important sub question.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so learning in the flow of work, and some people like acronyms, so it's LIFO, you see LIFOW in lots of places, so that's what that means. It was actually coined by Josh Bersin in 2018 when he started to see this emerging as a trend, and it's really pretty simple. It's when you get the content and information that you need to complete something exactly when you need it, not 4 days before, a year before, or 10 minutes after. It's like, so it's integrating that learning seamlessly into your day-to-day workflow, so that it doesn't interrupt you, but it helps you move forward. And when you think about so much of the learning that we've done throughout the course of our lives, both at school and in the workplace, we sort of think of it as, okay, I'm going to stop working and I'm going to go learn. Now I'm going to, I'll do my learning, and then I'm going to go back to work. And it's not highly integrated. So instead of courses, think of resources, right? So this idea of how do I make these resources available? And I guess one of the reasons, we care is, let me just ask you a question. So have you ever been in a situation where, let's say at home, something breaks and you want to try to fix it yourself? What do you do? What is your first reflex when you've got something that's, I had this happen with my washing machine not too long ago, and it was the weekend and I needed to do something. And so what do you think I did? What would you normally do?
Let me Google that for you.
All right. And then you find a whole slew of things. You play a video, you say, oh no, I prefer a transcript, whatever it is. You go through and you start and you get it right away. And you don't have to say, gee, let me think about going to a washing machine repair course in 2 weeks. That's not going to get me what I need. And it's, it's certainly not what any of us necessarily want to do unless that's our business. So for me, this is really learning in the flow of life. That's what we're all doing. We're all doing this.
Can I give you, I'll give you an example that happened just over the holiday season here. That was really interesting. My middle son has a computer, and okay, I'm embarrassed to say this because this is going to call me out so bad. Like more than a year ago, one key on his computer broke. It fell off. Everyone in this podcast, I live in the country of Mexico, so it's not. I mean, there's plenty of resources here and whatnot. We could go get it fixed, but it's a little expensive. Blah blah blah. When we went back to the States over the holidays, I'm like, okay, we're finally going to get this thing fixed. And we went out and people started giving us these quotes about $200, $500. And I'm just, are you kidding me? It's a key on a keyboard. And so finally, after a year, I just Googled, how do you fix this key? Turns out I bought a replacement key for $10 and it took us literally 45 seconds. And like the walkthrough was ridiculous. But that's my story. Like learning the flow, and he did it, right? This is my 12-year-old. And so he learned how to fix his keyboard right there. Bam. I love that. There you go. Over to you.
So so that's really, I think, the reason. Now, when you think of work, though, we don't necessarily think that way. Our assumption is, well, I'm going to have to go get, like your kind of assumption was, how do I go find somebody who knows how to do this, or somebody who can teach me how to do this, or whatever additional steps. And when we can't have it instantly, we tend to put it off. And maybe miss that opportunity for learning, or miss an opportunity to have my key on my keyboard. Well,
I like that. I think that you've hit that's a key thing for me right there. I procrastinate because I was like, I don't want to spend the money. And I don't, and it's going to be like, I have to break my day up and I have to schedule a meeting and take the thing. And then my kid maybe doesn't have his computer for a couple of days, but there was a whole bunch of possibilities that were going to put wrinkles in my life. Right. So,
well, and also just, think about this in a work context. So if you're trying to do your job and you don't know how to do that, and you don't have what you need to get it done, I mean, you don't have to be, a statistician to figure out what that might mean in terms of productivity, right? So I think one of the things that makes this even more relevant today is the degree of change that's happening. So it's not like we're kind of just all sort of leisurely, like our lives are staying the same. And so we're finding ourselves in a mode where the pace of change is so insanely rapid that a lot of the data out there's crazy data that talks about how, I think McKinsey said something like, I think it was like 375 million people are going to need to learn new job skills by 2030. So everybody's learning like every minute of every day, right? And it's and at work, that's kind of just part of the deal. It's not like we have the luxury of maybe signing up for a course in a month to be able to learn how to do that. And again, our personal expectations are, and why would I have to do that anyway? Like, why would you make me do that? So this notion of constant change. I like to look up change in the dictionary, and it says to make things different, and then it says to put fresh clothes on. Well, we're in this constant put fresh clothes on world that we're in. We're just constantly changing, and so I think that's an important piece. And then there's another reason why we should care, and that is that most people want to learn and grow, right? And so there's been some really interesting research that says, that and I think Burson actually did some of this research initially, that if people are learning on the job, they're 47% less likely to be stressed, 39% more productive in terms of how they feel and successful, and then 23% readier to take on additional responsibilities, and finally 21% more happy and confident. So we want people learning at work, right? And we all kind of want to do it, and so on and so forth. But we don't really, first of all, allocate the time. So I read the other day something like people have less than a half hour dedicated to learning per week. But I don't think that's more that formal training thing. I think most of us are just learning all the time.
Yeah. I was just, hi there. I'm sorry to break into the show right now, but if you're enjoying this show, if you are challenged, if you're inspired, if you're learning something, if you think that you're going to be able to get something out of this to put into your practice, do me a quick favor. Pause right now and just hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. It doesn't matter which one, just hit subscribe, because that way it'll make sure that you never miss an episode in the future. Thanks. Now back to the show. Say where is that half hour in? Because I am like kind of running through a Rolodex in my head right now. And I know of 0 people who are like, hey, on Thursdays, I block off a half hour to learn. Like, I don't know anybody, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, right.
If I'm completely honest. Right?
And so we're not allocating the time. So it's got to be built in, or it just doesn't happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody I know talks about this constant onslaught of back-to-back meetings and this and that. And so, if we're not building in the time, and in a half hour, even if we did build in a half hour, I mean, that is like, it's like what? That's like 1% of our. I mean, it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So. Part of what this is all about, and we had a situation with a large organization that I've been working with that needed to figure out. It's a fellowship program, and they needed to figure out how to get these people who are devoting their time and energy to this big, important project, learning all the time, because they just did not have the resources of the time to do it. And we'd been helping them with their thinking and understanding how they think, and giving them tools to do that. And they just weren't going to get them because they weren't available to them. They were kind of over here, over there. They've been part of. So it's like, okay, so where do they live? We asked ourselves, where do they live and where are they spending time? And like many organizations, everybody was living in Microsoft Teams.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, so I wonder if we could put our stuff inside of Teams rather than making people leave Teams to go find it. And that suddenly became like so we built an app inside of Microsoft Teams called Stop and Think, where they could go get the data on their team, look at what the tools that they could use to actually improve what they were doing at the moment, remind themselves of something that maybe was a blind spot for them. So it was really kind of an aha moment for us, which is that we had all these years sort of said, well, it's right there, it's right there, it's right there. Well, no, really where they needed it was literally where they're living. And we're sort of, somebody said the other day, where, people are apathetic with all of our like constant apps that we're in. And you don't want to have to go from app to app to app to app to app all day, right?
It's like it ultimately, and we've had other people on the show here just talk about how much friction is there between you and that learning nugget, or that aha moment, or whatever it is, right? And even moving to a new app, or moving to a new application, or just flipping back and forth between email and Teams and that other thing. Like our organization, we go into another completely different system in order to have performance reviews and those kinds of things. Like, that's, as soon as I click on that button, I'm like, here goes an hour. You know what I mean? I know that.
And it's more for you to learn. So it's like, okay, now in Slack, I have to do this. No, but in Teams, I need to do that. But, and so part of that also increases the learning burden. It increases the cognitive load that we've got. And we don't have unlimited brain resources. So, if we're wearing ourselves down, just moving from app to app, that's not helpful, right? So I think part of what I like to think of learning in the flow of work is it's really just enough, just in time, just for me. In other words, I've got a need, right? I'm in the moment. I need to be able to, solve a problem, and I can get it right there, right? And it's just enough. It's not a 3-hour course that I have to like download and watch. It's something that I can, easily kind of go through, so I get enough to solve the problem. And it's just for me. And it's not something, and I don't know how many times you've been in a situation where, this happened to me recently. I won't say more about what it was, but I was asked to review a learning program, and I got into that learning program, and the way this thing was designed, and I thought to myself, how am I ever going to get through this thing? Because it was really not designed in a way that I like to learn, right? So I got through it. I did get through it, but it was kind of one of those things. I don't know if you've ever experienced that or have experienced that recently, but you go into a learning thing and you're kind of going like, why is this so hard, right? So you want it to be as learner friendly in terms of how you've designed it, with lots of options as possible.
Well, I'll give you an example, another example from my children. Again,
Yes.
my eldest son is now eligible to, everyone watch out, he's eligible to drive a car, right?
Oh, that's a little scary
but a part of that process is, where he'll be registered in the state of Colorado, is that you have to take an online driver's course, which is, and here's the thing, it's not about passing. The interesting thing, because it's the way a government regulation works, it's not about, do you have the knowledge? It's not about, can you pass the test? It's about, did you spend 30 hours in the course? And so the number of times he came to me tearing his hair out saying, I can't click next because the 30-second paragraph that I read, I still have to stay on this page for 5 minutes because it has to be 30 hours. It just blew me away. Absolutely blew me away.
They need your help.
So there's an example of learning that's not designed for learning. It's designed for having a butt in a seat for a certain amount of time. But it was a great learning moment for us, because then I explained, hey, look, there's all kinds of different levels of learners, and even English language ability and understanding of all that stuff, right? So we have to look for a common denominator in that particular situation. But
yeah, and I think we saw this through COVID too, and what was happening, during the pandemic, right, where suddenly many people had to learn in very different modalities, right? And I think it was a big aha moment for a lot of schools, a lot of organizations, a lot of learners, where they kind of went like, I'm supposed to do what here, right? And have that sense of energy and frustration. So I think that simple idea, like J to the third power, right? Just in time, just enough, just for me, is my simple mantra that I keep in mind when I look at this. But it does require, it requires a few things when you start thinking about this, because this is a very big system change for most organizations. It's a complete rethink of, kind of what we do. The first thing that I think most organizations need to do, and one of my big learnings, is you've got to be very close to what somebody is doing. You've got to be learning and development has to be close to the business enough to understand what people are doing in the flow of work.
So
to understand what they need.
So this was you kind of have stolen my thunder, because this was my next question, was what's your, is the recommendation when you're working with an organization, another client or whatever? I'd love to hear an example or two of, much like all politics is local, is all learning, in my team, like, does it always go down to that, like, hey, here's my cohort that I'm working with on a daily basis, and that's where the learning should start or be designed, or like that? Or do I have that wrong?
No, I think there's some things that we know are consistent across organizations, right? From team to team to team to team, like major issues. And I was thinking about this the other day, and some of the places where so often, like, look at onboarding, and we've been working on an onboarding program. And so often what onboarding is about. So, onboarding is usually org-wide, right? It's pretty much, and then there might be something for specific function or specific team, right? So you've got this, and talk about learning stuff that you don't need in the moment. Like, you read through these policies, all this stuff that you'll never remember, right? So boy, is that an opportunity to kind of skinny that down and start thinking about that, the first 9 months rather than the first 9 days or 9, whatever it might be, to actually provide that. So I believe that there are some things that are universal, right? There are some things that are universal. But if what may not be true is that whoever's designing the learning may not truly understand, and this is something that we learned, what the reality of that person is in their day-to-day workflow, and how that learning is going to either build into that or really interrupt it. And so as you look at, part of what this means is really just sort of stepping closer to the world of work and not sort of thinking only about content. So for those of us who do learning design, we think a lot about the content and how important the content is and how are we going to deliver that content and so on and so forth. But it's that moment of contact between learner and content and what's going on in that world. And just as you were saying, like what we will do in life is we'll just lean into the keyboard and we'll just start Googling, right? We don't, and the moment of need is something that's very obvious to us. I think from a learning design perspective, understanding that moment of need is really important, because otherwise you can sort of set it up and get it all there and then it's either not accessible. So I think one of the things that is really important is looking at that issue of integration and accessibility. I talked about our putting, stop and think into Microsoft Teams, but making sure that it's in a place and in a flow, a workflow. And so when we learned about, folks in Teams saying, look, if we're going to be working on our team, we're in Teams. So, and I'm going to set up a conversation. How do I understand how that person is thinking so I can prepare that conversation with that other individual? Well, let's make it super easy for them to do that right then and there. And ideally, not have to learn how to do it, but have it so obvious that it's right there. So I could kind of click on through. And it just seems like it's part of my day to day. The other thing I think that's important is this notion of having it on demand, so that if you don't know exactly what moments these things are going to happen, and that will vary from team to team, that you can get it when you need it. Right. So it's available. So it may not be exactly right there in the absolute flow of work because it's not something you need all the time. But when you need it, you know exactly how to get it and you can apply it right away. And so this notion of having the right things on demand, designing it in a way that it's right at your fingertips, it's not complicated to figure out. It's not a burden for me to figure out how I'm supposed to learn, like you described with your son. Like I get into this and then what am I supposed to do here?
Right.
Where am I supposed to go? Or I've got to change apps and all that kind of stuff. So that notion of just making it super available and on demand, so that, I don't have to find the time or attend a course. It's there when I need it is something that, again, from a design perspective, and maybe these are little micro learning pieces that I can put together that are available. And if I want to do something longer, I can download that. But I also have the option of doing these little, bursts of learning that are just exactly, I'm a manager. I've done some feedback training. I've got a session I know that's going to be tough with one of my direct reports. And I'm kind of dreading it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can remember that feedback model. All I really need is a prompt to remind me of what that is, right? So I can go get it and I can grab it and I can do a very quick piece there. We talked a little bit about customization, and I think customization's super important in terms of how we think about, and I think that's mostly options, really making it so that, and I was talking earlier about going online and Googling. I'm one of those people who'd rather read a transcript, right? I'm just like, I don't need to sit there and listen to this person going, and now there's this and that. And if I need to see it, I'll scoot ahead and I'll lock it, but I want to skim, because I'm a fast reader, skim the transcript, find where I need to be. Other people, it's like, they don't even know a transcript's there. They're going to click on the video and that's it. Some people want closed caption, whatever it is. So that idea of having options and making it so that I can kind of feel like it fits me. We can't do everything for everybody's different, preferences, but I think there's a lot that you can do by just thinking about it, just like reflecting on what are some of the options we might have. And then the other thing I've seen happen is I think learning and development needs to figure out how they can really be great curators, and put things together in a way that I don't have to look in 15 places for it. I've seen so many organizations where they have, we've got our LMS over here and you can go there for that. But then we've got this other intranet thing where you go get that kind of learning. But if you think you have to go back over there. So that notion of, really curating thoughtfully and having that one-stop shop so that I know where to go. And again, I'm not thinking too hard. It's because, we won't do it. If that friction that you mentioned earlier is so real, we'll sit there and say, okay, what's the cost of my, like maybe just trying to figure it out by myself versus my spending the next half hour trying to get into that thing. And when you start to go, and maybe you choose to not even bother looking at it. And that's an incredibly wasted resource. So I think that those are some of the things that I'm seeing happening in organizations, that, you're focusing on accessibility, making sure it's on demand, that you've curated it and put it in a place that people can find, right? And that it's customized, or at least it feels customized. This feels like this was something that somebody thought about it, rather than just forcing me through this very, cumbersome process, which is kind of what I went through not too long ago. And I was sitting there thinking, like, I could really help these folks, with this learning design. I wish they understood, what a challenge it was. So I think that's interesting. And we also have with AI, which everybody is talking about.
You said it first, not me.
I knew it was coming up, so I figured I'd jump right in there. I think we have a whole new world of opportunity in terms of learning and support that can work really effectively. I think we're in the very, very, somebody was saying to me, you remember when the internet first got launched? And like, this is where we're at with AI. Like, we're just in that place where it's like, oh, this is a browser, and oh, what is that? Right. So we're not there yet. But I think we will definitely see AI helping organizations and people identify those moments of learning, those teachable moments, and then figuring out and delivering targeted, just-in-time content for specific challenges and opportunities. And we're not there yet, but I do think that's a huge opportunity. So you're seeing AI coaches and tutors pop up in school systems. You're seeing like the Khan Academy using it in ways that is really interesting. And so it's like that idea that I have like somebody said to me, well, AI is my intern. Right. So I use AI as my intern to go out there and kind of take care of some of that other stuff. And then
the AI and Learning Summit that we've been doing over the last sort of 6 months, 8 months, one of the last presentations we had in November was at Pennsylvania State University, where they have a live teaching assistant, is ChatGPT, and they've created a model. And this is not unique to them, right? But that was our presentation. And it was amazing what they're learning, what they're not learning, how they're refining it, and how it's what we've heard about AI. It's only going to get smarter, right? It's as dumb as it ever is going to be right now. And so I'm interested in when it comes to the personal tutors or a personal tutor, or that personalization piece. How many teachers I've talked to, especially in the K through 12 space, that are saying like, yeah, but it's not a person. Like, what do you do when you don't have a person there? And that's really interesting. It's a really interesting concept. I want to call out. We have a comment that came in from an anonymous user. It doesn't give us their name, unfortunately, but they're saying that they're not sure if it's considered a right, as in like a human right, but given the pace of the work environment and technology, it seems like what we've been talking about here, it's a necessity, right? Learning in the flow of work is kind of it's a necessity.
I don't think we have any choice. I think actually, and I think what's exciting for me as somebody who's like been working in the learning space for most of my career, this always sort of seemed like a nice to have, right? It was kind of like, but when budgets got cut, we all know what would happen, right? We get cut very, very quickly, right? Was the learning and development budget. At this point, this is not a nice to have in my view. And I think both learners and organizations are waking up to the fact that if we're not continuously learning, we will see a decline in our ability to compete. It's quite rapid, and that's true for individuals who are in the job market as well as companies who've got people working there. And I'm excited to see that learners are more and more demanding of the fact that they need access to the right stuff. They don't always feel empowered. Most of the time, one of the biggest complaints I hear from people around learning. So you say to them, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to learning? What do you think people will say is their biggest challenge during the work week?
Finding the time.
Yeah. So that is the number one. Even I saw a study the other day of L&D professionals, learning and development professionals. they said the biggest challenge for them to do learning was time. And I'm thinking, okay, so this is a universal problem. So I do think that there's a mindset shift that we need.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this comes from, let's think about it. Like when we started our conversation talking about it, we used to go to school and then we would like stop learning and go home, or we would go to, go to training and then go back to work. This mindset of it's kind of I'm in or I'm out. That's just not the way our brains work. I mean, our research shows that our brains are constantly learning all of the time. So this idea of compartmentalizing it and being able to kind of slot it in. So I do believe that one of the things that we're going to see happen eventually, but organizations that are really smart are doing this sooner rather than later, is that they are creating a context and an environment where people feel it's safe for them to say, look, I got to go learn this. I need to, that they can build that into their workday without feeling guilty about it or feeling like they're wasting time or they're taking time away from work. Learning is part of the work. Right. But we're not there yet. We are not there yet. And I think a lot of individuals they almost feel like guilty about it. It's like, well, I'm going to go off and I'm going to do this. And when in fact it's like what I need to get my job done. They don't want to let their manager know, and so on and so forth. So I'm hoping that our current circumstances where change is such a forcing function, that our mindset will shift and we'll start to see organizations wake up to the fact that they need to plan. A manager needs to say, I know that my team needs to spend this amount of their time every week in doing the learning they need to do to stay ahead. And years ago, we used to hear about Google giving people that one day to go off and explore or whatever. I mean, that was a long time ago, but the idea behind it, which is that we're intentionally building in that time, is, I think, going to be essential for people to be able to survive in today's environment. And it's actually, as we said earlier, it's like, you feel good when you've learned. I mean, people feel happier. They feel more successful. They feel like they're growing. They love your company more because they feel like they're actually, going to feel like they're getting something out of their day-to-day work. So it's actually a really good decision to make. It just is not part of our standard mindset when it comes to work. And I think that's going to have to change.
So final question for you, and I hope it's not too much of a curveball, but on the spectrum, as we're talking about our personal growth and our ability to stay competitive and our staying relevant.
Yeah.
There are many times when we are going to want to make a real big shift, right? I'm going to want to move from sales to support. I'm going to want to pivot in my career. I'm going to want to, move to a different company. In your opinion, when, or maybe we don't, do we move from being able to learn in the flow of work to saying, all right, I actually need to pause and really sort of make a big move? That's my question.
So I think learning in the flow of work doesn't replace deep immersive learning, or when you take a stop, we like to call it a stop and think moment, where you say, wait a minute. Okay. I have got to, and there's a lot that I need to learn in a very short period of time. And it has nothing to do with the flow of my work at all. Mm-hmm. So that is a decision. We see people make that decision all the time. I was just talking to somebody on our team who is moving from finance to HR, right? And she said, so I know that the first 3 months of my job is just learn. Like I'm doing, sure, I'm going to try to do everything I can, but I feel like I've stepped into a different planet. All the acronyms are different. Everything's different. And she's excited, but she also needs to be able to stop and take that moment and say, how much do I need to learn, and how do I build this in, and how do I make it okay that I've got some basic training that I need to do here. So I think it's a very healthy thing to do. We know from all of our research that in many instances, people do get to a point where they feel like, okay, is this all there is? I want to be able to expand my thinking way beyond the role that I've been put into. And so those are moments in time that are really important. And, so there'll still be a place for that deep immersive learning that we sometimes need to do. But you often do need to say, because of the time issue, if you're going to take let's say you get your half hour, if you're going to try to make that move a half hour a week, it's going to take you way too long to be able to feel like you can make the leap, right? So there are moments in time, and I think people need to feel like they have permission to stop and say, I'm going to make this move, and I'm going to go ahead and do that deep dive. And they're not going to get it all, all at once. But there are reasons why people study and go into different domains, and and it takes mental energy and time, but it's incredibly exciting and invigorating to do.
Amen. Ann Herrmann-Nehdi, it sounds like we survived the rain and wind, which is fantastic. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy day to share your thoughts on learning in the flow of work here on the eLearn podcast. How can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. So Herrmann Solutions, 2 R's and 2 N's, HERRMANN. You can find our website. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Ann Herrmann-Nehdi. Again, the R's and the N's there. Would love to interact with you there. So please connect with me. And delighted to have deeper conversations around this. This is something I'm heavily involved in our organization, and look forward to connecting with folks and seeing what you're doing.
Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you again for listening to the eLearn podcast here from OpenLMS. I just wanted to ask one more time, if you enjoyed this show, if you learned something, if you were inspired, if you were challenged, if you feel like, this is something you can take into your practice, please do me a favor. And right now on your podcast player, hit subscribe. That way you're never going to miss a future episode. Also, come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe there as well, because we have tons of great information about how to create killer online learning outcomes. Thanks.